Welcome back, podcast fans. I'm your host, Annette Hines, and this is Parenting Impossible, the Special Needs Survival Podcast. And today we're talking with Kelley Coleman. We are going to talk about things that are possible, not impossible today. Kelley has a new book coming out. It's coming out March 12th, right? March 12th. Yay. I'm so excited to talk to you, Kelley. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for being here and for being this voice that, like you said, the word possible not only says like, oh, here are all the things that are possible, but the way that you explain things is so clear. And I feel like, whether it's my book, whether it's your community, we have this desperate need for things being explained in a way that makes us feel like I could do that. And I'm actually excited to do that because it's going to give me a victory. So I love that we are coming from the same place.
Oh my God, you are just speaking gospel to me. When I started out on this journey, it was to really connect with other families and make sure that the information was accessible to everybody. I was so dismayed as an attorney. I have an MBA, like I'm well educated and I think pretty good at figuring stuff out. I'm very resourceful. And I cannot tell you how overwhelmed I was. I was like hiding under a chair half the time. It was so overwhelming and scary. I cried in IEP meetings, like and I kept thinking, if I can't do this,
Yes.
oh my God, how is the average person without all of this education and background in the law and regulations and everything, how are they getting through all of this?
Yeah.
So,
any of it.
oh my gosh. And
there's so much.
So your book is organized so well. It's called Everything No One Tells You About Parenting a Disabled Child. And every chapter is Everything No One Tells You About XYZ. So great. I have a couple of my favorites I'm going to talk to you about. But one of the things in this book, and my audience will definitely laugh, there's a lot of little checklists and stuff in here and forms and things. And oh my God, I never met a checklist I didn't love. So of course, I'm super excited about that because as we all know, taking control is really comforting, right? Yes. Feeling like you have some control. So I want to start out by asking you to just talk to us a little bit about your background. You're an author, you're a mom, you've got a beautiful career, and tell us all about it.
Thank you. So yes, author, mom, all the things. My previous life, my job was to come up with ideas for talking animal movies. True story. So I have no real life skills. So I'm coming at this from a place of like, what would a polar bear say to an opossum? I don't know. You're coming at this from a place of like, I have a law degree. So definitely coming to the disability space from a place of I know nothing. And when we're coming to this from a place of ignorance, whether it's about our own ableism that we don't yet realize it's there, but it's there. Or whether it's like all of these acronyms of all of the stuff. And I think even though talking animal movies doesn't really have any practical application, so I have no job skills, hooray! My transition into book writing, I never envisioned myself writing nonfiction, but as you know, when you are thrown into the deep end of the pool of your kid is disabled, now what?
Yeah.
You find yourself doing these things and found myself writing this book, but in a way that is very conversational, and the lists and the templates and interviews and contribution from other parents, all of these things, because not only does my brain work in checklists, so we're friends because of that.
Yes.
But they're so helpful.
Oh my God, yes.
Right? I could talk checklists all day long. It's the best.
Yeah.
But I'm so passionate about if this book feels like eat your broccoli and it sits on the nightstand and nobody wants to open it, then it fails. because we need everyone to start with this foundation of real and usable information.
Right.
Because we're all just reinventing the same wheels, and that's not
Oh,
up.
100%. I'm so frustrated with that, one parent figures something out, but then the next parent's doing it all over again. And this is really why we do what we do, right? I mean, we want to make sure that everybody has the information that we have. Not that our experience individually is going to apply to everybody else, but if we figured something out and we share it, it might help, six other people. It might help two people. It might help 200 people. It's just worth it. It is a little bit of an us and them situation out there. We're all kind of going for scarce resources, and it can be a little scary sometimes for parents to share information, but together as a community, we're a lot stronger if we share.
So much so. And the reality of what resources everybody is asking, as you know, it varies so wildly on what your child's support needs are.
Mhm.
I'm not fighting my best friend for feeding therapy because her kid eats. My kid has a feeding tube. So there is so much we can share. And with this book, my kiddo who has multiple disabilities, there's overlap with pretty much everybody because he checks a lot of boxes, but
Mhm.
also there are differences because of course there are. And I'm so excited about the idea of people taking this book, and it's not a like, here's what to do to solve the problems. It's
Yeah.
here's what I have learned. Here are my experts. Here is how to build the journey and the systems for yourself. Because we need to find ways to make this not only doable, but sustainable over forever in most of our cases.
Yeah.
In my case, this is a full time, forever job. And my son is 10 and he's amazing. I could talk about my kids all day. He's not hard, but the paperwork is horrible. Um,
Yes.
and we need to talk about the fact that, like, it is a decade in and I'm good at this stuff. And I am just now feeling like I'm creating the space to be a person outside of being a caregiver. And
Yes.
if we can give all of the everyone tools to do the caregiver things and treat that as a job, and basically like this is the job training of like how to be a caregiver, so that we're not wasting the time and the money, oh my gosh, the money, right, and the stress
How
and
many things do you try that don't work out? And yes, it's crazy, crazy. I, you know, I do this great introduction to planning sort of mini seminar, and I talk about the 3 steps that are not so easy to take to get a plan in place or start getting a plan in place. And the one of them is the last step is really communicating that plan to other people that you want to bring into what we call our circle of care. And people just forget that they have to do some on the job training with people. We've figured all this out. We finally gotten good at our job and we know what our job description is, but we haven't really like forecasted that to the other people in our lives that we would like to take part. And so that is a step that everyone misses. So I'm so happy to hear you talking about this in real practical terms. It's really why I love the book. It's funny, it's practical, it's sweet in parts. It's not a how-to book. I read books 25 to 30 years ago when my daughter was first born. They were very different than the kind of books that are coming out now. They were all about 2 things. One, it was a clinical guide,
Mhm.
right? You had all of those, like, what does it mean to, have
Welcome to
cerebral palsy,
neurology. Yep.
how to do therapy, this and that. The second one was all about our emotions and our feelings and, what's it like to be a parent and not have the perfect child. And though that was not what I needed. I needed somebody to tell me what the heck to do. You know, how do
Yes.
I deal with this? How do I deal with that? And back in the day, I'm an older mom than you are. And back in the day, like we didn't have all of the information that's out here now.
Mhm.
And we are so lucky in this age to be able to share real time information in the way that we can with online groups and books
Mhm.
that are instantly available to us and just so much. It's amazing, amazing.
It's amazing and it's exciting, and I feel like this book is a victory for all of us in
Yeah.
collectively in the community. And I think there is still so much of the how to, emotionally deal with this. And there are great resources out there, whether they're books, podcasts, websites, all the things. And there are certainly plenty of like people who are like, oh, let's just fix your kid. And I was like, oh no, that's not what
Yeah.
um but I was seeing this surprising gap in the like how to get stuff done.
Yeah.
Uh, and I feel like we need to kind of all put our heads together to do that.
Right.
And a big part of my book that and which was such an amazing learning experience for me, because I'll be learning all of this forever, was talking to real life disabled people.
Oh, this is the part I wanted to talk to you about. Yes.
And I could talk about this part all day. Number one takeaway:
So good.
get information about disability from disabled people.
Right?
This should not be a revolutionary idea, but as I was talking to disabled people, I was realizing that my information previously had been coming from people who are not disabled, and the conversations are different. And there is, whether we want to think it or not, there's still so much stigma and fear and
Mhm.
presumptions and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think we're just we're making it harder on ourselves in a lot of ways. And me having this suspicion in my head when my son has multiple disabilities. We started on this path when he was an infant, and from the beginning, feeling like there's something going on, and he has a
Mm.
genetic something that's still undiagnosed. This feeling of anybody who was like offering to a solution that would quote unquote fix my kid. It's
Mhm.
like, oh, that doesn't sit well. Also, like, it's genetic, so that's actually scientifically impossible.
Right.
Um, but when you talk to disabled people, and I love that those voices are being amplified and that this is the message that is getting out there instead of looking at fixing, which when I started on this journey, and I'm sure when you started on the journey, that was like the thing.
Yes.
And even, within the last decade, to saying, how are we supporting our children? Period. Whether they're
Mhm.
disabled, whether they're not. I have two kids, and it looks very different for the two different kids.
Yeah.
But when I am viewing all of my son Aaron, who's the one who is disabled, when I'm viewing all of Aaron's behavior as communication, when I am viewing all therapy as how are we tapping into who he wants to be and will become, rather than me throwing all of my ideas onto him.
Mhm.
And, and he's a great kid.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, newsflash, we do that with our neurotypical kids too.
We do. And then we talk about our disabled kids in a different way. And in my interview with Judy Human, that's in the book, and she's awesome.
Oh my God. I know. I can't believe you got to do that. I was trying to get an interview with her too.
It was
Um,
amazing.
and then we didn't get to connect and she was just too busy. And I was trying to schedule something with Alice Wong. And it's really hard. I mean, it's so great, like you said, that their voices are amplified, but there's not enough
No.
trailblazer leaders out there.
Yeah.
And, we're losing people. Of
Yeah.
course, Judy passed away. Sad, just such a sad day for the disability community. Um, but the interviews in the back audience are just enlightening and so amazing to be able to ask those questions. I loved that you mentioned ableism, and I loved that there was a comment, I think it was by Judy, about, when you mentioned about your own ableist ideas and just confronting those. And she said maybe not ableist. Was this Judy's interview or
Yeah,
was it
yeah,
somebody
that's
else?
Judy. Yeah, and it was so interesting because she was the one who was calling me out on when I was saying like parenting a disabled child on things, and she'd be like, "No, that's just parenting." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you're right. Good work, Judy." Uh, so was talking about confronting our own ableism and the ableism in the people around us and what a huge thing that is. And she said the word that she used is careful, that she's careful about using that word because is it ableism or is it lack of exposure? When
I
we
love that.
any disabled people in our lives, in our media, or the ones who are in the media are caricatured and weird and just all the things.
Yeah.
Is it ableism or is it lack of exposure? And why is there a lack of exposure? Well, because of ableism. And so it,
Yes.
it is a messy, cyclical thing, but it was very eye-opening for me to have that conversation with her of how can we approach all of this and approach others, and instead of shouting ableism at everyone, yeah, it's exhausting to have to think and rethink all of this stuff all the time, but saying like, what is the exposure? And yes, we and our children are teaching people all the time, whether we like it or not.
Right.
And again, it's not sustainable if you're yelling at everyone because that's just exhausting.
I know. I was the mom from hell, for years until I got myself under control. And that was very hard. But everything was so scary. And I just want to go back to the part of our conversation where we were talking about, um, you know, training and job descriptions. And, we didn't get any of that. There's
Mm.
still no training out there for us, but
Yep.
information, good information, appropriate, technically correct
Right.
information is a godsend, and it's valuable to infinity and back. And when we have that on board, we can move that ball forward, right? Because hey, our parents, for good or for worse, showed us how to parent, but nobody really showed us how to parent our kids that
Mhm.
were hospitalized all the time in the NICU, in the ICU, needing surgeries, needing treatments. So I want to jump into the book because there's a couple of chapters that really were my favorites for crazy reasons.
Oh, I have some
Um,
reasons too. Yep.
so there was a part in the beginning where there was a letter to myself from Maya Kukes.
Hmm.
Kukes? I don't know how to say her name. I'm
Because
sorry, Maya.
yep.
So she talks about shame and disappointing other people. And that's just a cloak that we universally wear as new parents of a disabled child. And that in and of itself is such a struggle to, move past that to get into, action
Mhm.
mode. And I just wanted to ask you if you experienced that.
I think so. Maya's letter, which I love for so many reasons. The shame, she talks about it in different facets, but the like, this was how I saw myself, and this doesn't fit in, and the shame of like,
Mhm.
this doesn't fit in with my life. Um, for me, shame has showed up differently
Mm,
because I felt like I was in a bottomless pit for the better part of the last decade. And
mhm,
so while I absolutely think there's swirl of shame and anxiety and overwhelm and emotion, for me, I just felt like I was just like, I am free falling down this pit for so many years
mhm,
that I think I'm still unpacking like what exactly all of that was. And for me, the kind of scratching my head, and again, I can't even name now because it still feels so fresh. Like, is that shame? Is that something else? For years, I felt like I and I still do this sometimes, which is exhausting. I spent so much time managing everyone else's fragile emotions
Mhm.
because all anyone was saying was, "I'm so sorry. Oh, this is horrible. I don't know
Yeah.
how you're gonna do this. Oh my gosh. Like,
You're such a saint.
such a saint. My heart bleeds for you." Like all of these things. And I'm like, can you just tell me my baby has great hair? Because he does.
Yeah,
Like, and
it's
so this
crazy.
weird shame is also being put onto us, even when we're not necessarily feeling that,
Yeah,
because everybody's telling you what a tragedy this is, and
yeah.
that's exhausting.
And and Maya talks about this too, the disappointment. She
Mhm.
felt like she was disappointing her family. And I thought that was, it just hit me so hard, where she was talking about her dad said, "Oh, maybe we don't tell everybody about this yet.
Yeah.
Let's wait and see how the baby actually turns out because maybe the baby's going to be normal."
Mhm.
So just pushing that sense of disappointment that there's wrong here, there's wrongness here.
Yes, and
Um,
disability is inherently bad, and it's something to hide, and it's something to really hope we don't have to deal with. Um, like, like I
I
just love the baby, and
Yeah, and I feel like we can't move into action mode and, taking care of business until we deal with that
yes.
aspect. So that's why I wanted to mention that first. Beautiful, beautiful job on that part of the book. So chapter 3, yay, working with the medical team, all the things nobody ever tells you about how to deal with your doctors and your medical teams and collecting the information, storing the information,
Mhm.
sorting the information, you know, making appointments, how to ask for things that you need, how to get things that you need.
Yes.
So, so good. Bravo. That was such a good chapter.
Thank
We
you.
need that so much.
We do. And by the way, our doctors need that too, because if they can share that information with us, so many of us come into these appointments frazzled and overwhelmed and all the
Mhm.
things. If doctors can say, like, here's a way to organize this so this visit actually works better for all of us,
Mhm.
that can make doctors' lives easy. And one of my favorite interviews in the book, there's a nurse who spent a ton of time in home health as well as in hospital settings,
Yes.
Yolanda Schubel, and she talks about what it's like for a home health worker to come into your house.
Mhm.
And man, I wish I had had that. That's really important. And I know you
Mind blower.
Yes.
Yeah.
You talk on your podcast so beautifully about the importance of home and community-based services and the scarcity of these care workers that we so
Mhm.
desperately need. And you know what we also need? We need to be the family that they really want to work with.
True.
And that's
Yes.
why I love this interview, because it's like, how can we be the people who retain workers because it is safe and pleasant and respectful to come here?
But here's the even better thing about this, because I'm 100% on board with everything that you're saying, but I want to take it to the next step, which is if 12 of us or 100 of us are really well trained, self-taught, and are, organized and have systems in place, we teach those healthcare workers at all levels how this can be such a good partnership. And
Yes.
then they take that energy and that approach to the next patient and patient's family who don't have those skills yet. I love the power of yet, by the way. And they will help to train them and bring some ideas forward. It's so important that we are not like the dread, right? Nobody wants to work with us because, oh my God, our situation is so sad. The mom is always such a mess. The dad's always drinking, whatever. Like, we don't want to be that family, but we don't want anybody to be that family. Like, we all want to lift each other up. And so I was thinking about that a lot as I was going through that chapter and how helpful just having one organized patient in a group, it's just helpful to lift up everybody in that group because the healthcare providers will learn from us. They will take a lesson from us. We can model good partnerships.
Mhm. Yes, and I love the word partnerships because even with people we don't like, we are going to have to make partnerships that will hopefully sustain and whether we like it or not, will sustain over many years. And I so often tell friends and other families and anyone who will listen to be the phone call that people want to return.
Yeah.
Because if you show up on the voicemail and they're like, oh, it's Kelley, what's up? They will call me back. And I have friends who I adore, but who are bananas.
Mhm.
And they're like, I can't get a phone call back. And I'm like, I'd be afraid to talk to you because you're always like coming in guns a-blazing with everything.
Yeah.
And how can we view all of this as a partnership? Because the bottom line is that gets us faster and easier to the goal of supporting our children to the maximum extent
Right.
possible.
Absolutely. 100%. So let's move to another chapter, which you would maybe think, why is that her favorite chapter? But oh my God, I loved the chapter on insurance, chapter
I
five.
knew you were going to say that. It's
All
really
the things
awesome, right?
nobody ever
Yes.
freaking tells you about
No.
insurance, right?
Yes.
Um, so I've not dealt with this in depth with this in my book, but I try to get to things like this on the podcast all the time. And I do a little mini course on how to be your best advocate and with really school districts and insurance providers in mind, because those are the people that always say no. And you need to be convincing them that this is what we need and this is appropriate. And so, oh my God, I love that chapter. So much great information. Just the definitions and the list of, this is what this term means. This is what this term means. Wow. If I had had that when I started out, how
Um,
amazing would that have been?
oh my goodness. And all of this information, if you have a decade with a lot of free time, sure, you can figure this all out or just read the book. When I was writing the book, the chapter that I was dragging my heels on and saving for the absolute last was the one on insurance and government benefits
Yeah.
because I knew the least about it of all the things in here. And what I knew for sure was that it was awful and confusing and boring, but it's really important. So it has to be in the book. And so not having it in here was never a question. And even when I first talked to the experts who were interviewed for that chapter, my first questions were like, why is this so awful? I am afraid and I like don't want to open up the envelopes and like, how can we change that? Because even if you don't have a kid, even if you don't have a kid who is disabled, you should still know what an explanation of benefits is and how to read it, what questions to ask the person on the phone, and how to get next steps if they
Yeah.
can't help you. And that chapter has fundamentally changed how I deal with our insurance plan. It
Yeah.
has gotten me reimbursements so much faster. And I feel like it's almost this like sneaky little secret that I don't hate calling the insurance company anymore because until the last year, I absolutely did
I
because
believe it.
I felt like I was at their mercy. And now it feels like I'm coming in with enough base of knowledge that I'm not afraid of the paperwork and the awful because I actually know how to do this now.
Yes. Yes, 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 yes. This is so empowering.
Yes.
Okay, now tell me what your favorite chapter was.
Uh, Insurance, because it's awesome. It's so hard to say what my favorite was specifically, the insurance one, because I was dreading it. I also really love the first chapter on getting comfortable with disability. That was not in my original book proposal because I hadn't yet wrapped my head around the need for it. And
Mhm.
to address that and really look at these things head on. And as you were saying, like there is stuff and emotion and baggage that we need to tackle in addition to, and often before, tackling all of the nuts and bolts stuff. And I am so grateful that the experts and the people cited in that chapter were willing to have these really open and honest conversations of like, I'm disabled and we got to talk about stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, so much. I never did ask you, what made you decide to sit down and write this book?
I spent years swearing I would never write this book. So sort of came as a surprise to me. Surprise. I was always like, man, this is so boring. Nobody like, no, this just sounds dreadful. It was a combination of a few things coming together that brought me to this, spurred by after my son had been in great shape, health
Yeah.
wise and everything on a good trajectory, to late night and seizures and vomiting and all of
Oh,
the thing. And the
oh,
next day, once he had gotten some sleep and was in good shape, he loves his therapies. And I was like, you know what? Let's take him to this one therapist today because he loves her and that's fun for him. So I did that. And I said, I'll be at the coffee shop next door. Call me if you need anything. And I was like, I'm going to be productive. I'm going to bring my laptop and I'm going to like work on the project I'm writing and pretend like I'm just being a person like everyone else. And I sat down and I had my sunglasses on, thank goodness. And I just started crying.
wow.
It was just like, it hit me with the realization of I need to, for the rest of my life, live a life that I can be yanked out of necessarily at any moment because of
Yeah.
my child's medical and other needs. And I just started writing, which is basically, it essentially remains the introduction for this book because it just felt like now is the time. And I feel so strongly exactly what you said. I'm good at this stuff and it is so hard for me.
Yeah.
And I talked to the other children's parents in my son's class, and the demographics are real. The unequal access to information is real. I'm a white lady who speaks English, so my kid gets more stuff. The statistics are reported and they are there, and that's not okay. And I just felt like everyone needs an equal starting point. This book should be in
Mhm.
every library so everybody can read it for free. And how do we even out that gap in access to information that we can understand and use? Because when I am just sitting at a coffee shop and crying and being yanked from my life and trying to figure this out, I
Yeah.
know there are thousands of other families doing the exact same thing. And
Goosebumps.
thank you.
Goosebumps. Because, yeah, I've been there way too many times. My story's a little different than yours. I mean, my Elizabeth is gone. It's been 10 years, so I've been on this journey longer, but it took me so long to get to all of these points, especially this last one, which is taking care of the caregiver.
Yeah.
You know, all these silly little things that people say, like, oh, go get a massage, go get your nails done. You'll feel so much better. Take a bath. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I have so many thoughts on that, and so many people who are like, "You look stressed. I'm worried about you. You should take a yoga class." And I'm like, "Are
Yeah.
you kidding?"
I laughed so hard when I read that in the book. You should take a yoga class.
Yeah. And well-meaning friends who are saying this, and I'm like, I am falling apart in every way, and I don't want to be in a room with a bunch of bendy 20 somethings who are like going off to brunch after this. And self-care is exactly what you said. Like, as a caregiver, we need to take care of the caregiver, and
Mhm.
it is very different than just taking care of a parent. Sometimes, as a this said, I say this in the book, and as a therapist once said to me, right now, your to-do list is your yoga. And that might sound boring and not as fancy as a spa day,
Mhm.
but there are so many times when, in order for me to enjoy a massage or a manicure, like what at brunch with the friends, like whatever the watching TV, even whatever the thing is that is most people's baseline for self-care, I need to have a system in place that gets the things done, that checks things off the checklists, so
That's
that
right.
I actually have the mental and emotional space to feel good about stepping away from that. Because I think that is where a lot of shame comes in, is when people feel like, if I go for a walk or if I go out to dinner with my friends or anything, then I am taking time away that I should be working on the IEP and crafting new goals and all of this.
Oh, yeah, just fill in the blank. I mean, there's
Yeah,
always a long list of things to get done,
yes, yes.
always.
And we need to find a space where we can put the to-do list, physically or mentally. By the way, I have a lot of post-it notes right here on my desk. Uh, but we have to deal with that as a reality and as a job,
Yeah.
so that we can say, I'm a parent always and forever to my kid, and I am a caregiver always and forever, and that part of the job doesn't end.
Yeah.
But this part, I actually do need to put that in a box and end that at the end of the workday, so that I have the space and the capacity for all these other things.
Yes, absolutely. So much. And it just looks different for everybody. You know, some people want to go for a walk with their dog, other people want to go to church and pray, other people want to take a yoga class, like whatever it is. So
Absolutely.
it's hard to write a script for that.
Mhm.
When my daughter was young, life was very hard, and I was single parenting these two kids, and I had a doctor that I did not love. And she would, every time I saw her, she would talk to me about how, now, I mean, this was, we're talking 20 years ago, but she would talk to me about, like, oh, there's this great place, this residential setting where you can, put your kid. And I'm like, this is a doctor talking to me. And I was thinking, how is that okay? Like, why is she telling me this, that I should put my kid in this institutional setting so that, we can all feel better,
Mhm.
except for my kid. Elizabeth won't feel better because she won't be with her family, but we'll all feel better. Like, I didn't get that. That was so intrusive and
Yes.
just on the, like, just totally on the wrong track. And that is somebody who was not listening to what I needed, you know, not listening at all. And I mean, I have just, it runs the gamut to, letting your doctor know that you're feeling depressed. And what do? They write out a prescription. No, just listen to me for a minute. I want to be heard. We are so invisible as caregivers,
Mhm.
and we just need to be out there, and people need to hear us, and people need to know we're part of this community. You know, it's, we may need more now, but eventually we'll be able to give. We'll be on the other end of that. It's that, I think we have a long, long road still, a long hill to climb, I think, with just the average person in the community really, like, understanding kind
Mhm.
of where we're at and what our lives are like.
So much so. And we unfortunately, have different versions of that story where people are
Yeah.
telling us what we should do with our kids. And I'm like, I'm just going to go over here and love my kid. Cool. Great. I'm done talking to you. Um, Caregivers are so unseen within this equation. And
Yes.
added to that, and the internet, I think, has complicated this mess so much, is the very complex situation of, I believe the statistic is 80% or just over, people with a disability, children with a disability, are in a household and family where someone does not share their disability. So,
Mhm.
as a caregiver who is not disabled, there are plenty of circles where people think I need to step back and only acknowledge my son and his needs, and everything is all about him, as the disabled person. And
Mm.
I feel like, wait, so if it's all about his existence, then mine doesn't matter? And I just kind of give up on whatever because I need to fully 100% of my time to there. It's
So wrong. So
really,
wrong.
it's messy and it's hard. And I think it creates this unnecessary rift oftentimes between non-disabled parents and disabled individuals who are rightly saying we need to be heard. We need to be the ones owning the experience of disability, telling the narrative of disability. And it ends up coming across sometimes quite literally as parents, you need to sit down and stop talking and back it up, and parents saying, "You don't live in my house. What do you know?" And I feel like we need to actually have real conversations of, you have lived experience that I need to listen to and that I will gain so much from. And I am the expert on my family and my child. And how do we put that together so that we're not talking over each other? Um, because if we could instead spend our time passing bills for home and community-based services, like,
Mhm.
it would all do a lot better.
Totally. Yeah. Um, it's it's kind of like we were talking about earlier, where we need to model that partnership with our healthcare workers. We also need to model for our kids, disabled, non-disabled, and the community, what a happy parent looks like. Our kids are not going to be happy just because we tell them to be happy. We have to actually show them what happy looks like. They
Mhm.
need that from us. They're looking to us as, the defining points of their life and what their life's going to look like as an adult. If we are haggard and frenzied and crying and, you know, in my circumstance, I gained a lot of weight. I drank a lot of wine, early on. And it was hard to be happy. That's something that you have to work at. And it just, how could I possibly expect my kids to live a life different than I'm living? I don't
Mhm.
want my daughters to grow up thinking that they have to sacrifice everything and that they don't matter.
Mhm.
So you just hit so many points that I completely agree with.
And can I just highlight some of the things you're saying of, like, being happy? Like, there is work involved, and I think part of that work is also not having this weird toxic positivity of, I'm fine, everything's great, I'm
Yeah.
good. It's always a blessing. Like epilepsy, not a blessing in our house. Um, that we are modeling, not just like, oh, this is great, let me clean the vomit out of my hair. Um, which is a thing in our house often, and that's cool, it's fun. Um, but I think by acknowledging caregiving as a job above and beyond and in addition to parenting
Mhm.
allows us to have a real relationship with our communication and with our kids, because it allows us to name the hard things.
Oh my God, yes.
Right? And if we're
Oh,
saying disability is hard, you know what? That's not serving anybody. There are so many things about my child's disability that are not hard. And
yeah.
there's so much about him that is just 100% awesome. But you
Mhm.
know what? I wish he could sit still for 60 seconds. Like that would would be helpful.
Yeah.
Um, but talking about, here's what actually is hard, here is the work of caregiving, and here is the love of parenting, and the happiness that I'm guessing you are talking about is like, what is, whatever this caregiving job is, what is the joy of the parenting experience and of life? And any kid will have victories and will have these moments. And even if, like, I'm gonna cry. Like the other day, my son was we were at Trader Joe's. and they taught him to like stock the shelf, and then they came and they gave him a Trader Joe's hat because he was working, and they were like, "You earned that hat, dude. We can't put you on the payroll because you're 10." Um, like whatever the thing is, like celebrating these joys that are parenting joys, even if they're a different version of reality, not reality. Whoa, no, back that up. A different version than other parenting
Families.
experience and
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
Um, I really think if we can just talk about caregiving for what it is, acknowledge the hard stuff for
Yeah.
what it is, and there's a lot that is hard, it allows us to be very genuine and real in our happiness. And when we find and tap into that and communicate that to ourselves and our children, when it's fake, it's like that dam is going to burst any minute. But
Yeah.
when we can say, here's what's hard and here's the other stuff that's not hard, is so empowering.
Okay, so audience, I'm going to give you some homework. I don't usually do this, but I want you to practice being authentic about your feelings, good, bad, ugly, whatever. Pick a person outside of your family, not your partner, not your other kids. Pick somebody and be real with them for like 10 minutes. You know, there's going to be a lot of people that can't deal with it, but it's okay. You find somebody and have that 10-minute conversation, whether it's about something happy, whether it's about something sad, whether it's about something hard, whether you're angry. Stop, take that mask off for a second, and just have a chat
Mm-hmm.
and let it out.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so
And
I'm like
one quick
way
thing on
over
that.
time. Oh,
Oh,
go ahead.
okay. One super quick thing on that. A great way to practice that is commit to whenever anyone says, "How are you?" You cannot say fine.
Yeah.
You're not fine. You're a lot of things, but very rarely is anyone ever just fine. Answer the question.
Yeah, totally. And embellish, talk about something that's going on. Oh, I'm having a great day because, I love the way my hair came out today. Or I'm having a great day because I got a full night's sleep last night. Or, I'm really tired today because John, Lucas, Lisa, Anne, whoever was up 3 times last night. And, it was a tough night. Whatever it is,
Yeah,
just
I love that.
practice having authentic conversations with people and let them in.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my gosh. First of all, Kelley, I feel like I've known you for a million years. You're
Oh,
like a friend. I
yes.
love it. Um, I could talk to you about this for days. And lucky for us, she's agreed to come and be part of our new book club. So I'm going to try to get Kelley scheduled in our circle of care on Mighty Networks for April so
Yeah.
that everybody will have a chance to buy the book when it comes out on March 12th. And the book is called Everything. I know I'm going to get this wrong. Tell me.
Everything
Every
no one tells you about parenting a disabled child.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. I was
It's a
like
big title.
was
It
going
makes
through all the words in my head, and I'm like, these are not going to come out in the right string.
it's
Okay.
a lot of words, but it tells you what it is.
So basically, every chapter is everything no one tells you about, dot, dot, dot. And um, it's really just everything that you need to know. It's a great book. I can't wait until it's out. I'm going to write a nice review. I'm so excited. I'm
Thank you.
excited for you. And I can't wait to talk in a group with other moms, dads, caregivers who just want to have a real conversation about, all the things in the book. And we'll see how many people raise their hand and say they love that insurance chapter. I know,
I'm
I know it's
I'm
gonna be
so excited. I love that you brought that up because no one wants to read that chapter until they're reading that chapter and they're like, "Oh, how is this fun? I don't know
I
what it is."
and I totally needed this, all the things you never knew that you needed to know, but now you know them. You can know
Yes.
them. So good. And the book is written in a way that, you can read it all the way through, or you can pick the chapters that you need to look at that time for whatever's going on in your life. And it's a good resource that you can just keep around. I think mine's probably going to end up being pretty dog-eared by the time we're all done with this. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, and it has been so great getting to know you.
Ditto, ditto. I love our conversation and can't wait to talk to you more and everyone in the book club.
All right, see you soon. Thank you.